Sammy Davis has a gorgeous home. I went out and visited him. The landscaping, the shrubbery and the trees. See, I come from Philadelphia, and I lived in row houses. We never saw that, shrubbery and trees. So if ever, the good Lord willing, I ever become a star and I move to California, I'm going to get a home with lots of trees, because I realize now that a house without a tree ain't fit for a dog.
Tammy Davis had a gorgeous home. When I went out to visit him, I was struck by the landscaping, the shrubbery and the trees. See, I come from Philadelphia, where I lived in row houses. We never saw that kind of greenery. Shrubbery and trees were like a dream to me. I remember thinking, if the good Lord's willing and I ever become a star and move to California, I'm going to get a home with lots of trees. That's when I realized, a house without a tree isn't even fit for a dog in his last days. Joey Bishop, comedian, Rat Pack member, and TV personality, had a life and career filled with both triumphs and hidden heartbreaks. Born Joseph Abraham Gottlieb on February 3, 1918, in the Bronx, New York, he was the youngest of 5 children in a Jewish immigrant family. His father, Jacob, worked as a bicycle repairman, and his mother, Anna, took care of the home. Life was modest and often difficult. When Joey was just 3 months old, the family moved to South Philadelphia, where he would spend his formative years. It was a vibrant, loud, and culturally rich area filled with Italian and Jewish communities. There, humor was a way of life. People turned hardships into jokes and found laughter in the everyday. Bishop soaked it all in. Even as a child, he could imitate famous actors like Edward G. Robinson and Jimmy Durante, and he began to develop an instinct for comedic timing. School didn't come easy to Joey. He struggled academically and dropped out by the age of 18 to help his family financially. Though he took various jobs, including working in his father's shop, his mind was always on something bigger. He performed in amateur comedy contests, winning small prizes that affirmed his talent. In the 1930s, he teamed up with his brother Maury in a vaudeville act called the Bishop Trio, named after their driver, Glenn Bishop. They played in clubs and burlesque houses, learning to survive in rough venues with rowdy crowds. Bishop's quiet, dry humor made him stand out in an era dominated by loud slapstick. When World War II began, Bishop's career was interrupted. He joined the U.S. Army in 1942 and served in the Special Services as a sergeant, entertaining troops and lifting morale with his wit. After the war, he returned with a new purpose. He resumed his solo career under the name Joey Bishop and began performing in small clubs across New Jersey and New York. His subtle, self-deprecating style started to catch on. By the late 1940s, he was making $11,000 a week, an enormous sum for a young comic at the time. In 1950, he began appearing on national variety shows like The Ed Sullivan Show, gaining wide exposure. Then, in 1952, Frank Sinatra saw him perform at the Latin Quarter in Manhattan. Impressed by Bishop's understated charm, Sinatra invited him to open at Bill Miller's Riviera in New Jersey. That invitation would change Bishop's life. Soon, he was performing at the legendary Copacabana and other high-profile venues. His act, full of dry wit, personal anecdotes, and quiet confidence, was a hit. He didn't shout, insult, or clown around. Instead, he talked to the audience like they were friends. One of his best-known jokes described how poor his family was. "We didn't have a sled. I had to ride my cousin down the hill." It was funny because it felt real. Bishop's ability to connect with people made him a standout. While Sinatra, Dean Martin, and Sammy Davis Jr. basked in the limelight, Bishop became the Rat Pack's comedic backbone. Dubbed the Frown Prince, he was the serious-faced funny man who crafted much of their stage banter and helped keep their famously chaotic Las Vegas shows running smoothly. Audiences loved the apparent spontaneity of those late-night performances at the Sand Hotel, but what they didn't see was Bishop's behind-the-scenes work, writing material, balancing personalities, and delivering the perfect one-liner when things veered off course. His humor provided structure to the group's unpredictable energy. He even appeared in some of the Rat Pack's films, including Ocean's 11 and Sergeant's 3, contributing comic relief with his unique style. In 1961, he hosted President John F. Kennedy's inaugural gala. The Rat Pack had been strong supporters of Kennedy, and Bishop's role was to keep the night moving with grace and humor. When the first family arrived, Bishop looked at them and said, "I told you I'd get you a good seat," earning a room full of laughter and applause. But behind the scenes, trouble was brewing. In the early 1960s, Bishop's relationship with Sinatra began to fray. The final blow came when Sinatra asked him to fill in at the Cal Neva Lodge, a resort Sinatra partially owned. Bishop responded with a list of demands, including $50,000, 000, and a private jet. To Sinatra, who valued loyalty above all else, this was an unforgivable insult. He had given Bishop his big break, and now Bishop seemed to act like Sinatra owed him. The result: Bishop was out. Sinatra erased him from major projects and replaced him in Robin and the Seven Hoods. The message was clear: Bishop was no longer welcome. The fallout was devastating. Bishop wasn't just dropped from the group, he was blacklisted from parts of the industry. He kept working, but the betrayal left him bitter. He rarely spoke openly about what happened, but made veiled comments in interviews about being undervalued. It stung that people acted like he had simply been lucky to be part of the Rat Pack, as if he hadn't earned his place. Even years later, the shadow of the Rat Pack followed him. He had been part of something legendary, and then cast aside. That wound never fully healed. Still, Bishop pressed on. In 1961, he starred in The Joey Bishop Show, a sitcom loosely based on his life. He played Joey Barnes, a public relations man in Hollywood. The show had a strong cast, including Abby Dalton and Corbett Monica, and occasional guest appearances from celebrities like Andy Williams. Though it started in black and white on NBC and later transitioned to color, it never found a huge audience. In 1964, CBS picked it up, but strangely reverted the show back to black and white, which hurt ratings. Even guest stars like Peter Lawford and Sammy Davis Jr. couldn't save it. By 1965, the show was canceled for good. One particularly eerie moment in the show's history involved comedian Vaughn Meader, known for impersonating President Kennedy. Meader filmed an episode of The Joey Bishop Show on November 15, 1963. A week later, JFK was assassinated. NBC quietly shelved the episode, a chilling reminder of how quickly history and entertainment can shift. Despite setbacks, Joey Bishop remained a persistent presence in American comedy. His story was one of subtle brilliance often overshadowed by flashier peers. He was the quiet force behind the scenes, the writer, the balancer, the comic who could bring down the house without raising his voice. He never became the biggest star, but in his own understated way, he helped shape some of the most iconic moments in entertainment history. The episode featuring comedian Vaughn Meader on The Joey Bishop Show was never aired and remains lost to this day. Even though the sitcom wasn't a massive hit, it helped establish Joey Bishop as a recognizable TV personality. But Bishop wasn't done yet. In 1967, he took on an even bigger challenge when ABC gave him his own late-night talk show, also called The Joey Bishop Show. This time, he was going head-to-head with Johnny Carson, the undisputed king of late-night television. Competing with The Tonight Show was a daunting task. Many had tried and failed. Bishop's version brought a more relaxed, conversational tone and introduced Regis Philbin as his sidekick, giving Regis his first big national break. The show featured celebrity interviews, comedy sketches, and musical guests, with occasional surprise appearances from Rat Pack members like Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., and Peter Lawford. Despite these efforts, the ratings never quite matched Carson's loyal following. Still, Bishop knew how to stir interest. In July 1968, Regis Philbin walked off the show live on air, claiming frustration with network criticism and a fear he was holding the show back. Audiences were stunned. Headlines followed. But the truth later emerged. It was all a publicity stunt masterminded by Bishop. It worked, briefly. Curiosity drove viewership up, but the momentum didn't last. In 1969, ABC canceled the show after 2 seasons. Even though his late-night show ended, Bishop remained a TV regular. He often returned to guest host The Tonight Show, filling in for Carson with skill and ease. But as the 1970s progressed, Bishop began to feel left behind. Comedy was evolving fast. A new generation of comedians, like Richard Pryor and George Carlin, were redefining the craft. Pryor shared raw, emotional stories from his troubled past, while Carlin skewered politics and society with biting commentary. Their humor was personal, boundary-pushing, and brutally honest. Bishop's clever wordplay and calm delivery felt outdated in comparison. He wasn't the kind of comedian to adapt, and he didn't try to. The comedy world moved on. Bishop, once a staple of nightclubs and television, was no longer in demand. His falling out with Sinatra meant fewer industry connections. Without those, staying relevant was nearly impossible. By the 1980s, Bishop had all but vanished from the spotlight. He took a few small film roles, like a bit part in the 1986 Chuck Norris action movie The Delta Force, but they were largely forgettable. In 1996, he appeared in Mad Dog Time, a film directed by his son, Larry Bishop. It was a personal project, not a comeback. His career decline wasn't just a result of shifting tastes, it reflected years of setbacks. Being ousted from the Rat Pack had stripped him of influence. His unwillingness to adapt left him out of step with audiences. He had stayed the same while the world moved on. Joey Bishop married Sylvia Rusga in 1941, and their marriage lasted 58 years, until Sylvia's death from cancer in 1999. Their bond endured the chaos of Hollywood, long separations, and the grueling lifestyle of show business. While Bishop performed across the country with the Rat Pack, Sylvia remained the backbone of their home, raising their son, managing the household, and maintaining their stability. She never sought the spotlight but provided the quiet strength Bishop needed. Their son, Larry Bishop, born in 1948, grew up in the world of entertainment but forged his own path. He became an actor, writer, and director, starring in films like Wild in the Streets and eventually directing Mad Dog Time and Hell Ride. Despite working in the same industry, the relationship between father and son was never especially close. Bishop's long absences created a distance that never fully closed. They respected each other, but emotional warmth was scarce. Bishop, famously, stood apart from his Rat Pack peers in one key way: he didn't drink or use drugs. While Sinatra, Martin, and Davis Jr. were known for their partying, Bishop chose clarity and control. It wasn't a moral stance, just a decision to remain grounded. His friends respected him for it. He often remained the composed presence even as others reveled into the early hours. Everything changed after Sylvia's death. She had been his anchor. Without her, he withdrew from public life. His health, already declining, worsened. He made few appearances and lived quietly in Newport Beach. That home had special meaning. In the late 1970s, Bishop and Sylvia had been sailing back from Mexico when they were caught in a violent storm, 60-knot winds and 16-foot waves. They barely made it to safety, docking at the Balboa Bay Club in Newport Beach. The experience left such a mark that they later bought a home on nearby Lido Isle. It became their sanctuary, a retreat from the glitz and chaos of the entertainment world. Though Bishop was the last surviving member of the Rat Pack, he never felt like an equal. He was the comic relief while others sang and stole the spotlight. Sinatra once called him the hub of the big wheel, a gesture of respect, but Bishop never truly felt seen that way. In books and retrospectives about the Rat Pack, his name often appeared last, if at all, sometimes even after Peter Lawford's. It hurt. One article by columnist Earl Wilson even claimed Bishop only spent time with Sinatra when invited, implying he wasn't truly part of the inner circle. Bishop disagreed. He knew he had earned his place, not out of charity or luck, but talent. He had helped shape their act and made their shows tick. He wasn't the star, but he was indispensable. Still, Bishop never turned against Sinatra. He respected him and liked to share stories that revealed Sinatra's decency, like the time Sinatra made sure a young fan got to meet him instead of brushing her off. To Bishop, that was the real Frank. More than the legend, more than the parties. After Sinatra died, publishers offered Bishop millions to write a tell-all book. He refused. He saw it as betrayal. The Rat Pack had built something special, and he wouldn't destroy it for profit. He also resented how history remembered them, focusing on the drinking, the scandals, and the chaos, rather than their unity and cultural impact. They had taken a stand for civil rights, refusing to perform in Las Vegas unless Sammy Davis Jr. was given the same rights as white entertainers. That, Bishop believed, was the real legacy. Though his own career had highs and lows, he took pride in what he had accomplished. He had his own sitcom, a late-night show, and a seat in one of entertainment's most iconic groups. He was often overlooked, but he never let bitterness define him. His final years were quiet. By 2005, his health was deteriorating. In one of his last interviews, he became too disoriented to continue. Joey Bishop died 2 years later, on October 17, 2007, at the age of 89. His passing marked the end of the original Rat Pack. Bishop's legacy is complicated, part triumph, part quiet resentment, but always grounded in loyalty, dignity, and a belief that what they had built truly mattered. Even if the world didn't always give him the credit he deserved, he knew he had been part of something extraordinary. And in the end, that was enough.